And so now let's go into the management experience. This is my favorite part. So the core of this is being able to get that consistent hybrid management experience, right? We're not pushing you into OEM-specific tooling. You're not even leaving the interface that you would use to manage the cluster on a daily basis, right? So this example, we're showing you on the left the OpenShift web console. And we're actually in the Dell APEX Cloud Platform menu within the OpenShift web console looking at a list of the nodes, right? So I can glance at the node information right from the web console. And then on the right-hand side, the fleet management at scale for OpenShift is, of course, advanced cluster management. Very similar when we look at the Azure side of things, right? So your local cluster management is going to be through Windows Admin Center, right? So we've built that extension for Windows Admin Center where you can see those nodes and that infrastructure information right within Windows Admin Center, right? And then again, for your fleet management at scale, you're going to use your Azure Management and Governance Services. But the idea is you're using consistent tooling for that Cloud OS. All right, so let's jump into the OpenShift Cloud Platform. So what we have is Red Hat OpenShift, right? It's a normal 4.13 deployment. This happens to be on an APEX Cloud Platform for OpenShift cluster. So you'll see this new menu item on the left-hand side, Dell APEX Cloud Platform.
Can I have a question?
Yes.
Do you support hyper cluster of OpenShift?
You're asking about HyperShift.
HyperShift, yeah.
It is on the roadmap. It is in the works. We definitely recognize the value of. So it was HyperShift while it was in tech preview.
Yeah.
Now that it's launched in 4.14, it's officially referred to as hosted control planes.
Exactly.
But yes, we are absolutely working on support for that.
So you work to support that on the native deployment on your hardware or as well on Azure Stack?
So that's not going to be on the Azure side of things. That would be supported on the APEX Cloud Platform for Red Hat OpenShift.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Because really, we feel that ACP for OpenShift makes the perfect host cluster, right? So if you're going to host multiple control planes on that cluster, why not host it on a bare metal cluster that you can do that infrastructure management right
but
from?
It's going to be inconsistent with the stack in the Azure stack. So there are going to be different. Potentially, you could land with the two different configurations. So you will have a hyper cluster on your traditional infrastructure, and then you will have a little different infrastructure on Azure Stack. A little bit.
Not really.
Okay.
So, let's take this offline because I would love to have this conversation, but I think it's going to be a little bit too much of a tangent. All right. So what we have is the APEX Cloud Platform menu. So here I can see cluster information. I can see the status, if there's updates available, CPU, memory usage, things like that. I can see the Red Hat version and the cluster version. I can go into inventory. And I can see the nodes within the cluster, right? If I dive into one of these nodes, I can see the front of the cluster, the front of the node. I can view overview information, including, I had mentioned that rack position, the location information is accessible from in here. The iDRAC IP address is right here if I needed to get to the iDRAC for some reason. I can see alerts. The boot devices, so in the case of ACP for OpenShift, we don't do disks in the nodes, in the compute nodes. We use BOS. So the core OS is actually running on BOS drives inside the node. And you can see the device status for those drives. All right. Now, I can also look at the back of the node. That includes drilling into each individual component within that server. So I can see health, I can see firmware information. I can look at the status of power supplies. I can even drill into individual NIC ports within a multi-port NIC, right? I can look at MAC addresses. I can see the link speed, the link status, is that connection up or not? If I had GPUs in these nodes, I'd be able to see the GPUs in here as well. So all of this information about the infrastructure is available to me right here in the OpenShift Web Console.
Can I perform actions on that hardware, or is this purely informational?
So right now, the only action is to blink the LED. We do, within the node list, you have the ability.
But that's super useful.
No,
which server is that? Make it blink. Got it.
Yep.
No, I'm just like,
absolutely valuable.
I understand it's really useful. I'm just like, okay, where did you start in there?
So we do also have the ability, and I'll touch on this in a little bit, to add worker node right from within here. So I can expand the cluster. I can also remove worker nodes from the cluster right from within this console.
Okay, so if you need to put one in maintenance mode to do something, or you're just ejecting it from the cluster because it's being retired, you can...
Right. So most of that is going to be through OpenShift mechanisms, not through Dell mechanisms.
Right. The actual removal from OpenShift can do, but then...
Well, so as we do remove node, it's going to remove it from the OpenShift cluster,
okay.
But it's also going to take the extra step of re-imaging that node back to factory.
Oh, okay.
So that node is now in a state where it can be either retired or it can be added into another cluster.
Are you also using Ansible to do that as well, or is it just pure OpenShift?
So we are using our automation. It's the Cloud Platform Foundation software that's handling the workflow, and it's wrapping OpenShift API calls and mechanisms. Right. That's part of that Cloud Platform Foundation software, right? It's the deployment automation, it's the lifecycle management, the day two operations, and also the LCM. But I did have a question come up once of, well, if I needed to disable a NIC, could I do that from here? And the answer for that with OpenShift is you wouldn't do that through the hardware, you would do that through OpenShift, right? So it's... So as we look at updates, you'll see we have the ability to pull updates from the internet. This requires that you configure a Dell support account. And then we also have the ability, what we refer to as local updates. So we can deploy this in a disconnected environment. You could point to the update bundle that you download from Dell support, upload the files, and then run the update that way. Security, this one I really like. This gives us the ability to manage the certificates. The APEX Cloud Platform API Gateway, which is the Dell one, but also the OpenShift Ingress and OpenShift API certificates can be managed this way as well. Right? If you stick with self-signed, they'll auto-update. But if you move to an enterprise certificate authority, then you'll want to manage those. And management is just as easy as clicking Update Certificate, pasting in the information, and saving, and it'll rotate those certs for you. Within the settings, we can support network proxies. These can be HTTP, SOCKS 4, or SOCKS 5. This is where you would configure the support account. It's just a matter of a username and password that has support access. Connectivity. This actually ties back to our dial home capabilities, but also provides integration into Cloud IQ, right? So you can actually step through this process that's going to enable dial home for any hardware-related alerts, enables secure remote support connectivity, as well as Cloud IQ integration. You can connect the Cloud IQ integration today. The information will be available in Cloud IQ in a future release. Right, so we're waiting on a Cloud IQ update, and then you'll be able to see inventory information in there, and then eventually telemetry data. Last piece is support. So you can create a support request. If you've configured that support access, you can search the knowledge base right from within the OpenShift Web Console. And then we have the ability to create log bundles. So I can go through, create a log bundle, and I can collect which information do I want to grab and be able to create that. One other piece I want to touch on before I head on to the Azure side. Notice that we have the ability to view alerts and view performance. When I click on view, notice I'm not going to a Dell page, right? I'm going into OpenShift alerting, right? All of our hardware alerts are flowing directly into OpenShift alerting, because if customers have already put in integration, monitoring, and notifications based on OpenShift alerting, we want to be able to leverage that. We don't want you to have another view that you've got to go to for the hardware, right? So it all flows in together.
What about observability, platform integration there? Things like Splunk, Dynatrace, Datadog.
So if you're pulling from OpenShift alerting already, then it's already going to be in there. So if you've already integrated OpenShift alerting with those other tools, those external tools, then you're going to inherit that, right? So our alerts are going to flow into that same system.
But the integration you're doing here, so if I've got to go via OpenShift to get to Splunk, for instance.
No, I'm saying if you've connected OpenShift alerting to an external system where those alerts are flowing from OpenShift to an external system, our alerts are going to flow through that same channel.
So I've got to go to my Splunk UI to look at my...
If that's the way you've configured it, yes.
There's no integration in the same way you've done with OpenShift. There's no kind of, I can't look at it all in one pane of glass. I've got to get out of this for my Dell and OpenShift, and I've got to go over here into my Splunk console.
The point of this is we've put the alerts in the same place your OpenShift alerts are going to be. So if you've done something to connect your OpenShift alerts to some other system, whether that be a monitoring system, an analysis system, right? If you've done that work, we're going to flow through those same channels. So you're going to go to the same alert view for our stuff as you would for any other OpenShift alerts.
Yeah, there's just not you haven't done a single pane of glass integration of something like a Splunk or a data. I've got to actually go out.
No, because if we built that integration, then it's just going to be for our stuff.
Yeah.
Right, we don't want to do that. We want to put it into OpenShift, and then you integrate in OpenShift however you want to.
Understand.
Right? Same thing with performance. We're directing you right into the OpenShift dashboards. So here we have an APEX Cloud Platform for Microsoft Azure. So as you can see, we're in Windows Admin Center on the APEX Cloud Platform view, right? So we can go look at the physical view, so we can see the list of nodes. We can see the health information at a glance of those nodes. We can drill into a specific node and see more detailed information, that front view, that back view of the node. Right? We can click on an individual item and see the details about that component. Right, here's the back view. And again, I can drill into a specific NIC port. Are you starting to see that consistency across the platforms, even though it's implemented in a completely different cloud operating system, a cloud operating experience? That consistency across the Cloud Platform Foundation software and what we're enabling through that cloud-specific OS.
I suppose the fundamental question for me is, why would you do this rather than Azure Stack on-prem? Is it you like Dell hardware? Because the control plane, I mean, you just mentioned the Microsoft Azure. I'm just trying to, what's the decision process that I would go through as a,
so this is implementing
to go, I'll do this versus do that?
This is implementing Azure Stack. This is Azure Stack HCI.
So I'm like, Azure Stack's hardware in with their control plane versus your hardware. This
Microsoft doesn't. Microsoft has very limited hardware for what they offer for Azure Stack HCI, and Azure Stack Hub is primarily OEM, right? So most of your Azure Stack HCI implementations are OEM implementations, right? So you need to pick an OEM vendor to go with to implement Azure Stack HCI.
Yeah.
The question is, which OEM vendor do you pick, right? And what we've built out is integration that nobody else has.
So if someone were to select Dell or be an existing Dell customer, at this point in time, would this be the path that you would probably send them down to deploy their Azure Stack, for example?
So if they were an existing Dell customer and they wanted to implement Azure Stack HCI, this is absolutely the path that I would recommend. Same thing for OpenShift. If they're an OpenShift customer, ACP for OpenShift is exactly how I would recommend implementing it.
Yep.
Right? Because anything else isn't going to be full solution level support, right? With this, we are providing full stack support, full stack lifecycle management, right? Anything else is going to involve some level of DIY.
You mentioned OpenShift and Azure Stack HCI. Was there other cloud OSs that are coming in the future, or is it just going to be those two for the foreseeable future?
So we have VMware coming.
Okay.
Those are the only ones I can speak to today.
When you say VMware, we're talking like VCF, or more just like
vCenter.
vCenter with vSAN and NSX bundled?
It would not be vSAN. It would be Dell SDS storage.
Okay. All right. So it'd be SDS storage and then NSX if you want it, I guess.
I'm not sure. I'm getting a nod.
Can you still buy it that way from VMware? You can't.
You gotta buy it all.
Well, you can buy. You can buy everything. You just won't be using everything.
Right.
Well, yeah, good point.
Yeah,
You buy VCF and then you just not use some of the things.
Well, you don't have to buy VCF. You can get vSphere,
VVF.
Foundation, VVF,
VVF.
right?
Va.
If you need vSphere, you got to buy one of those.
Mhm.
If you want
Okay.
NSX, you need VCF. If it's going to be integrated with APEX Cloud Platform, who knows yet? TBD, right?
So we have the ability to do a compliance check. What this is doing is it's going through and checking your compliance against that continuously validated state, just ensuring that everything, it hasn't updated yet, just ensuring that everything is in line so you can report on that compliance and know if anything needs remediation. All right, we can see alerting, the server information, so another view of the server inventory that's not the physical view. So you can see more detail like CPU and memory information. All right, we can see the storage information. This is S2D today. Updates, so we can see if there's any available updates. Security, so with the Azure side, we have the concept of what's called infrastructure lock, where you can prevent changes to important settings within BIOS and iDRAC. Those settings can't be changed while the infrastructure lock is on. We also have support for secured core server. And then, of course, very similar, the support integration, the knowledge base, being able to create a support request, being able to show the latest configuration, and then, again, log generation. So being able to create a log bundle. So I hope you are able to see what we're getting at, the consistency between the different platforms, right? And how we've taken that infrastructure capability and elevated into what the cluster admins are using to manage the cluster on a day-to-day basis.